Welcome, Santa Clarita. This is your essential weekly connection to the most important news stories affecting our valley. On KQRU 107.9 FM, we go beyond the headlines to bring you the stories shaping our present and future. Get ready to be informed, inspired, and entertained. This is Santa Clarita Weekly. And now, here's your host, Sage Rafferty.
Welcome back for another edition of Santa Clarita Weekly. I'm Sage Rafferty. You can listen to the show on the radio at KQRU 107.9 FM on Thursday afternoons at 5:30 and on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock. And we're also on YouTube and Instagram, and you can find us online at santaclaritastar.com. This week, the Department of Defense decided to stop transmitting hurricane forecast data. We will hear the response from Congressman George Whitesides about the decision. And today I'm going to share with you a speech that New Jersey Senator Cory Booker gave to the California Democratic Convention in Anaheim just last month. And we will discuss the DoD's decision to rename the USNS Harvey Milk, which was named for the famous gay civil rights leader. And finally, in Major League Baseball, the Dodgers beat the Colorado Rockies. I want you to imagine for a moment that you're an airline pilot. And right before you fly into a major storm system, the tower calls and tells you they're turning off a critical piece of your radar. Not because it's broken, but just because. And it sounds absurd, right? Negligent even. Well, that is almost exactly what the Department of Defense has just decided to do to our national hurricane forecasters. As we stare down the barrel of what is predicted to be a hyperactive hurricane season, the Pentagon has decided, effective immediately, to cut off access to a vital stream of satellite data that allows forecasters to see inside hurricanes. And this is a small thing. And by Monday, the data stream will be gone, and meteorologists are using words like insanity, devastating, and alarmingly bad news. This decision, made behind closed doors, could directly impact the safety of millions of Americans along our coast. So what is this data? It comes from an instrument called the Special Sensor Microwave Imager Sounder, or SSMIS. Think of it like an MRI or an X-ray for a hurricane. Your standard satellite picture, the one you see in the news, shows you the tops of the clouds. It's useful, but it doesn't show you the storm's structure. And microwave data lets forecasters peer through the clouds down into the engine room of the storm, and it helps them locate the exact center to see if the eye wall is forming and detect the clues of rapid intensification. That's when a storm explodes from a Category 1 to a Category 4 overnight. So this data stream from 3 military satellites makes up roughly half of all the microwave data our forecasters use, and as of Monday, it goes dark permanently. This decision has left experts and lawmakers completely stunned. One of the leading voices asking why is Congressman George Whitesides of California. Now, Congressman Whitesides is a freshman, but he's not new to this field. He's a former chief of staff at NASA and sits on the House Armed Services Committee, specifically in the subcommittees for strategic forces and innovation. When he speaks about space and satellite technology, it's with real authority. And I want you to listen to what he says about the DoD's decision.
Hi, everyone. Congressman George Whitesides here from California's 27th Congressional District. This week, the Department of Defense made the incredibly dangerous decision to literally cut off satellite data that helps hurricane forecasters track storms. This data saves lives, it identifies the intensity and landfall of the storm, and it allows families to prepare for natural disasters before they hit. Now, NOAA and the National Hurricane Center weren't consulted on this decision, proof that this decision wasn't just reckless, it was part of the larger federal assault on science and our scientific agencies. Let's be clear, cutting this data means slower forecasts, less accurate forecasts, and a greater risk for families right as hurricane season is moving towards its peak. Now, as the former chief of staff of NASA, the vice-ranking member on the Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and a member of the House Armed Services Committee that oversees the Department of Defense, I can tell you directly that losing this data will lead to real and increased danger for family across our country. We're going to keep fighting this misguided decision however we can, and I'll keep you updated as we learn more. Thanks, everyone. Hi, everyone. Congressman George Whitesides here from California's 27th Congressional District. This week, the Department of Defense made the incredibly dangerous decision to literally cut off satellite data that helps hurricane forecasters track storms. This data saves lives, it identifies the intensity and landfall of the storm, and it allows families to prepare for natural disasters before they hit.
The Space Force confirmed the satellites are still fully functional, but the data will no longer be shared. As Congressman Whitesides put it, this kind of interagency breakdown is dangerous, and the Department of Defense owes American people an immediate explanation. You can't just unilaterally decide to blind our weather forecasters, and this couldn't come at a worse time. The loss of this data, according to hurricane specialists, greatly increases the odds of a sunrise surprise, as they call it, when coastal communities wake up to find a storm offshore. It's suddenly a monster, leaving little time for evacuations, and it degrades the forecast models that predict a hurricane's track. A small error in locating the storm's center at the start can lead to a forecast that's off by hundreds of miles a few days later, and that's the difference between a city being prepared or being caught completely off guard. Now, you might be thinking, isn't there a replacement? Well, yes, there is. It's a new satellite called the Weather System Follow-on Microwave, or the WSFM, was launched back in April. It's up there, but here's the catch. The data from it isn't available to forecasters yet. And according to the NOAA, it's not clear when or even if full access will be permitted. So let's just put a fine point on this. The Department of Defense is turning off a perfectly functional, life-saving data system before its replacement is actually online and operational. And it makes no sense. This is the kind of bureaucratic decision making that puts lives at risk, and Congressman Whitesides and other leaders are demanding answers, and they deserve them, and we all do. And when a storm is churning in the Atlantic, the American public should be confident that our forecasters have every tool available to keep us safe, and flying blind should never be an option. So I want to share with all of you a speech that New Jersey Senator Cory Booker gave at the California Democratic Convention in Anaheim, California on May 31st. He spoke out against the Trump administration in an electric speech that had delegates standing cheering.
Because I get to serve in the Senate with two bold brothers named Padilla and Schiff. You all have sent two of the strongest leaders I have ever had to serve with, and I want to say thank you. Now look, I had a speech that I was going to give today, but last night I went to bed and I had a very emotional dream, and I decided to throw out the teleprompter, and I just want to share with you from the heart the person that came to me in a dream. This is weird, but I want to share it with you nonetheless. Last night I had a dream about my grandfather. My grandfather came to California right after the war. He was a union man, worked for UAW. They moved to Sugar Hill in Los Angeles. My mom went to Manual Arts High School, and my grandfather was this extraordinary man who loved on his family so strong. He was an activist. Him and my grandmother were big in the Urban League and the NAACP. They were strong in their church. They continued to be union organizers, and by the time their grandchildren came along, me and 6 others, they were determined to make sure that we honored the traditions of this nation. You see, they knew that love is sometimes unrequited. They loved this country so much even when the country didn't love them back. And they knew that we would face trials and tribulations beyond our imagination, but they wanted us to rest on our ancestors. They knew the instruction book for how we move forward is by us looking back. This is one of the reasons why they're trying to erase our history, try to ban our books, is because they don't want us to understand that the history of this nation is not an absence of wretchedness and hatred and bigotry. The richness of this nation is how we faced that darkness with our light, how we overcame it with our strength. My grandparents wanted us to know that American history is a perpetual testimony to the achievement of impossible things against impossible odds. They wanted us to know that real change does not come from Washington. It comes from communities. It comes from the streets. It comes from the people who stand up and have shown over and over again against the powerful, against the elected, against the rich, that the power of the people is greater than the people in power. And so my grandparents, these proud Californians, they taught me the stories. They celebrated the people from Harvey Milk to Cesar Chavez. They knew that our ancestors would speak to us. My grandparents knew that we would face fascism again in our time, that we would face authoritarian leaders again in our time, that we would face demagogues in our time, that we would face people that tried to trash our Constitution, erode our democracy with chaos, with corruption, and with cruelty. But my grandparents would teach us, do not center those people in the story. Do not let them steal all the oxygen and the attention. Keep the focus on the people. Center the power of the people in their stories. I stood on the floor of the Senate for 25 hours. I stood because the people of my state, activists in my nation, would not accept that we didn't have power. Let me tell you something. In my supermarket, I would go in and people would always come up to me and say, what are you doing as they're trying to cut health care? What are you doing as they're violating due process rights? What are you doing? And I would tell them what I'm doing, and they would say to me, it's not enough. And I would tell my constituents, wait a minute, we don't have the majority in the Senate. We don't have the majority in the Congress. We can't do this. And they would interrupt me and say, Cory Booker, are you an American or an Americanate? Don't call on us to do more unless you're willing to do more. And so my staff and I listened to folks. We threw out the playbook and we said, let's go back to what our ancestors showed us. Let's cause some good trouble. We are here because of people who stood up when they were told to sit down. We're here because of people who spoke up when they were told to be silent. We're here because of people who marched in front of fire hoses and dogs. We are here because of people who faced outrageous obstacles and still banded together and said, we shall overcome. Not because it was easy. We're here because it's hard. We're here because we did endure through the night. But joy did come in the morning. Well, let me tell you about the last time I saw my grandfather alive. He had battled cancer again and again, won many battles, but this time cancer was getting him, and I was leaving. And I didn't know this would be the last time I would see my grandfather, but I said to him, Granddad, I love you. And he looked at me and he said, I love you, I love your children, and I love your grandchildren. Well, I didn't have children or grandchildren. I thought his dementia made him confuse me with his son, my uncle. Well, I left him and I was in the middle of a campaign to be mayor of the city of Newark, and I know exactly where I was. I was driving on 18th Avenue, and I get a phone call from my mom, call your grandmother, your grandfather has died. Well, I didn't do what my mom told me. We pulled over to the side of the road and I wept into the dashboard. And then suddenly I remembered his last words. I love you, I love your children, I love your grandchildren. And I realized right then that they actually meant more than I realized at the moment. It wasn't delusion or confusion. It was the truth that my grandfather, your grandparents, our ancestors, when they were alive, they loved so strong and so hard that generations yet unborn benefited from the blessings of their life, of their love, of their grace, of their grit, of their guts, of their fights, of their tears, of their sweat, of their blood. We are here because our ancestors loved us so great and so mighty. But let me tell you something. I was telling that story to a man named Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, let me tell you, I love Dr. Tyson, but he's an atheist. I'm a man of faith, and we joke with each other. But I'm going to tell you right now, I have met more righteous people that are atheists than I meet sometimes hypocrites that claim to be religious. I always say, before you tell me about your religion, first show it to me in how you treat other people. Understand that I serve in Congress with people who say they're Christian evangelicals, but they're the first people to cut food programs from the poor, cut health care from the sick, cut services from the disabled. That don't sound like my Jesus. Well, Leo and I were arguing, and he goes, Cory, let me do this for you. Let me do this for you. I'm going to do something. I'm going to tell you something spiritual. And I go, what do you mean, Neil? You're going to get spiritual on me? He goes, yeah. He goes, Cory, when you look at the sun today, know that you're not seeing the sun where it is, because it takes 8 minutes for that light to travel to Earth. You're seeing the sun where it was. And when you look at the stars in the sky at night, Cory, some of those stars are hundreds and hundreds of millions of light years away. Some of those stars have died and gone out, but you're still seeing them as if they're there because the light that they gave off while they were alive continues forever. He goes, I know your grandfather is passed, but his light is still something you bathe in the warmth of. It moved me and made me think about that idea of our light. Because right now, this nation needs our light. There are generations yet unborn that are being affected by the cuts to scientific research, to cancer research. There are generations yet unborn that are being affected by the people that are being wrongfully deported from our country, who are our essential workers, who are our neighbors, who are our brothers. They need our light right now as they try to attack California's environmental protections. And so I want to end with this story of a man my grandfather would have been proud of. We are in a spiritual storm right now. But in New Jersey, we had a horrific storm. It was called Hurricane Sandy. On the night of that storm, I was driving in my car with 2 police officers that were in the front seats, and I was in the back. And as the wind shook our car, I got a call. And it was a call that began with what I believed at the time was the stupidest question in America. Forgive me if that sounds rude, but let me tell you what that stupid question was. I answered the phone, and the person said, hello, this is the White House operator. Will you hold for the President of the United States? And I'm like, who says no to that question? Yes, I will hold. And let me tell you this right now. This was 2013, so I miss Obama. And I miss her husband, too. Michelle, if you marry me, I'd be president right now. So I answer my phone, and it's Michelle's husband. And he's doing something beautiful from the Oval Office. He's checking in on me and checking in on the city. We had an amazing phone call. The worst storm in a century, and the President of the United States is checking in on people around the state directly, and it was amazing. I hung up the phone on him. And as soon as we hung up from our conversation, my phone rang again. This time, no operator, was the governor of my state. You all have never heard of him. His name is Chris Christie. Never heard of him out here. I know. But this was not a time for partisanship. It was a time for patriotism. It was time to put people first, not politics. And we had a great conversation. But as soon as I hang up the phone with him, we're going up a hill, and I see at the top of the hill, through the rain and the wind and the darkness, I see a light. being swung back and forth. As we get closer, I see behind this man with this light was all the trees at the apex of the hill had come falling down, pulling down the wires and the wood. It was a mess. But here was this man swinging his light. As we got closer to him, I saw it was an elderly man in a yellow slipper. My officers pulled over so my window was facing him, and I rolled down the window and I looked at him and I yelled at him over the wind and the rain. I said to him, Sir, what are you doing out here? And this elderly man looks at me as if I asked him the stupidest question in America. He points over to the twisted wires and the shattered wood, and he said, Mayor, this is so dangerous. I'm standing here to make sure no one comes along and gets hurt. I had just talked to the President of the United States of America. I had just talked to the governor of my state. I'm the mayor of the largest city in my state, but the greatness I best saw exhibited that night was the man standing on top of a hill in dark of night in a savage storm, holding up a light so that others would not get hurt. That is what we need now. California, will you stand up? Will you hold up?
You're listening to KQRU 107.9 FM in Santa Clarita. You can listen to Santa Clarita Weekly on Thursdays at 5:30 p.m. and on Saturday mornings at 9, and on YouTube, Instagram, wherever you listen to podcasts. So next, we're going to talk about a decision that has sent shockwaves through communities, especially LGBTQ plus communities across the country. And let's be clear, this isn't a simple case of both sides have reasonable disagreement. This is an unprecedented and deeply political move by the new Defense Secretary, Hegseth. We're talking about the renaming of the USNS Harvey Milk. And for those who don't know, Harvey Milk was a Navy veteran and a pioneering gay rights activist here from California. And naming a ship after him was a powerful statement of inclusion and recognition of the sacrifices made by LGBTQ plus service members. And Hegseth claims he's, quote, taking the politics out of ship naming, end quote. But let's call it what it is, an attempt to erase the legacy of a civil rights icon. To suggest that serving as a gay man in the Navy during a time when it was criminalized is not heroic is a profound insult. To suggest that serving as a gay man in the Navy during a time when it was criminalized is not heroic is a profound insult. Harvey Milk's service was in itself an act of courage. The Secretary's justification for this move is that ships should be named after military heroes. But the USNS Harvey Milk is not the only ship named after a civil rights leader. We have the USNS Thurgood Marshall, the USNS Cesar Chavez, and the USNS Harriet Tubman, to just name a few. And is he planning to rename all of those ships? Well, it seems like he just might. A list of other ships that could be on the chopping block includes vessels named for Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and labor leader Dolores Huerta. This is not about honoring military heroes. It's about a political agenda to erase the names of those who fought for more than. This is not just about honoring military heroes. It's a political agenda to erase the names of those who fought for a more just and equitable America. Now, I'm going to play for you an excerpt of Pete Hegseth's speech announcing the renaming of the USNS Harvey Milk. And as you listen, I want you to think about the message this sends to our service members, to our allies, and to the world.
Well, I'm pleased to officially announce that the Department of the Navy is renaming the Fleet Replenishment Oiler, formerly known as the USNS Harvey Milk, to the USNS Oscar V. Peterson. We are taking the politics out of ship naming. We're not renaming the ship to anything political. This is not about political activists, unlike the previous administration. Instead, we're renaming the ship after a United States Navy Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, as it should be. People want to be proud of the ship they're sailing in. And so we're renaming it after a chief, a Navy chief. That during the Battle of the Coral Sea in May of 1942, Chief Water Tender Peterson led a repair party on the USS Neosho. The ship was severely damaged by Japanese dive bombers, and the entire repair party was either killed or severely wounded. Peterson himself was gravely wounded, yet he managed to single-handedly close the bulkhead stop valves, thereby helping to keep the ship operational. In performing his historic actions and heroic actions, Peterson received additional injuries and burns, which tragically resulted in his death. But his spirit of self-sacrifice and concern for his crewmates was in keeping with the finest traditions of the Navy. And for his heroic actions, Oscar Peterson was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. So I would like to officially welcome the USNS Oscar V. Peterson to the Navy's vessel register.
So that was Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. The decision to rename the USNS Harvey Milk and the threat to rename other ships honoring civil rights leaders is deeply troubling development. That isn't to say that Peterson shouldn't have a ship named after him. After all, he was an American hero. But this is a move that seeks to divide us and to roll back the progress we've made. This isn't just about patriotism. It's about politics, plain and simple. Now, let's turn our attention to sports and talk about the Los Angeles Dodgers. It was a wild, wet, and wonderful night for the Los Angeles Dodgers as they tamed the Colorado Rockies with a convincing 8-1 victory, even with a little help from Mother Nature. The big story of the night was Max Muncy, who has been on an absolute tear. Muncy came up huge with a grand slam in the 7th inning, his 8th career grand slam, and drove in a whopping 6 runs. He's been seeing the ball incredibly well, and last night was no exception. But the weather played a huge role in this one. A downpour in the 6th inning caused a delay of over an hour, and it actually helped the Dodgers get on the board. Muncy hit a 2-run single on a pop-up that got lost in the raindrops. You don't see that every day. And on the mound, Yoshinobu Yamamoto was dealing. He was absolutely fantastic, throwing 5 scoreless innings with 6 strikeouts and allowing only 1 hit. Unfortunately, the long rain delay cut his night short, but it was a dominant performance from the Dodgers ace. And we can't forget about Shohei Ohtani. He reached base 4 times with a single and 2 walks. And while he didn't have any runs scored in this game, he's been a consistent force at the top of the lineup. So to recap the Dodgers' victory in the rain-delayed game against the Rockies, Max Muncy, the grand slam in 6 RBIs, a stellar, although shortened outing from Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and a final score of 8-1. So that's all we have for today. So tune in next week for more discussions about the news from Santa Clarita. You can listen to the show on the radio at KQRU 107.9 FM at 5:30 on Thursday evenings, at 9 on Saturday mornings. And you can also watch us on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. And listen to us on SantaClaritaStar.com, wherever you listen to podcasts. So leave us a comment, and be sure to subscribe to Santa Clarita Weekly Online. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Santa Clarita Weekly. You can watch the show on Santa Clarita Star's YouTube channel and Facebook page, as well as listen in on the radio at KQRU 107.9. Visit SantaClaritaStar.com for more content and tune in right here to KQRU 107.9. A new voice for Santa Clarita.